The Sabres are back on the ice. We've got practice to talk about. We've got a trade rumor involving the Buffalo Sabres and some interesting things going on in the Four Nations today. Is Quinn Hughes going to play in the final? We'll talk about it coming up on the Locked On Sabres podcast.
Your Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello. What is up, everybody? And thanks for making today's edition of the Locked On Sabres podcast one of your listens. And thanks for making us your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. That includes checking us out on our YouTube channel. If you would like to watch the show, that's available to you, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers to FanDuel get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Sneaky Joe DiBiase on a Tuesday. The Sabres are back on the ice. We got a couple of rumors about them, some practice updates to get to, and there's a lot of good stuff happening in the hockey world, of course, right now. The Four Nations rolls along, and got a really good text question that I want to get in on today's show involving Ryan Johnson, who is not somebody that we talk about a lot because there isn't really a lot happening with Ryan Johnson. But a check-in on him sparked by one of our texters asking, like, what's going on with that guy? That's coming up today on the Locked On Sabres podcast as well. If you would like to check us out on that text club where that one texter sent in a question, or on Twitter, anywhere you want to check out the show, joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSabres is the place to hit us up for text updates, whether that's on practice today, we would have that for you. Roster moves, of course, if there ever was a trade, we bring that to you. And then, of course, questions and comments and, some stuff throughout the game as well is there for you. And then at Sneaky Joe Sports for me on Twitter and at Sneaky Joe in Blue Sky. If you want to follow the podcast account, that's at Locked On Sabres on Twitter. So before we get to anything that is happening in the Sabres world right now or with the Four Nations, I do want to start off with this text question because it's maybe an individual that you're wondering about and that Sabre fans are wondering about because he's kind of become the forgotten man. Ryan Johnson of the Rochester Americans, former first-round pick of the Buffalo Sabres. That was a while ago now, 6 years ago, in fact. Ryan Johnson was a first-round pick. In 2019, he was a first. He is 23 years old. He went through a 4-year career in college. And, the amount of dedication and attention to Johnson throughout his college career and whether or not he would sign with the Sabres or tell them, no thanks, I'm going to go hit college free agency and sign elsewhere, hasn't ended up really being worth it. We didn't know that at the time, just hasn't come to fruition. And I want to start this off by saying I don't think Ryan Johnson is terrible at everything. I think from what I saw from him in his limited time with the Buffalo Sabres, I saw a player that was, pretty good at knowing where to be, knowing where to move the puck to. And I didn't think it was really that bad. I thought a lot of the advanced numbers showed too that the games he played for the Sabres in the last couple of years, last year it was 41 games. So he played exactly half a season. This year it was only 3. So this is really more about last year. I felt like Johnson was not half bad, not great, not good. I didn't think terrible either. I think he was a fine, average third pair defenseman. But he really didn't stand out in any way. And when you're a first-round pick or a former first-round pick, you would like to see that in one way or another. Now, Johnson has been in Rochester all year long. And if you haven't heard much buzz about him, it's because there hasn't been much. The story for me about Ryan Johnson is someone that's not watching him day-to-day in Rochester this year, but did last year for the Sabres and then had sparingly seen him in Rochester. To me, the story on Ryan Johnson is very simple. He's not an NHL player. Doesn't mean he won't play in the NHL. Maybe he'll get 10 games here, 10 games there. Maybe he'll play a full season somewhere, but there'll be a lot of years where he's going to play more in the AHL than the NHL. And that's fine. Some guys that happens to. He was a very late first round pick, 31st overall, which at the time was the very last pick of the first round. Of course, that was the selection that the Sabres received in the Ryan O'Reilly trade. The Blues won the cup. That pick was last in the first round. Jason Botterill used it on Ryan Johnson. And I believe that was his last first round pick. I want to double check that that's right. But I believe that is correct because the 2020 COVID draft, Botterill gets fired, right? And then, that turns into Jack Quinn. So Botterill's last first round pick was this guy. And we're 6 years in. He's played 44 games for the Buffalo Sabres, and he has not scored a goal. And again, he's not supposed to be judged solely on goals. He's a defenseman. This is kind of amazing, though. Ryan Johnson, between the Sabres and the Amerks, has played 119 professional hockey games and has not scored a goal. Not one. His last goal was almost 2 years ago playing for Minnesota. He scored against Ohio State. That's the last time he scored a goal. Now, the one way you could mark that as a criticism is what he was supposed to be when they drafted him was an offensive defenseman. He, though, lacks the elite physical traits. He's not very big. He's not very fast. He's not very quick. He's not very strong. But what was supposed to make up for that, at least this was the story when he was drafted, was he's going to be such a good processor of the game and such a great passer of the puck that those two things are going to equate to him being dangerous offensively and being someone that doesn't make a lot of mistakes, gets the puck out of their own end. And he's fine in those areas, but he's not good enough in those areas, I would say, to overcome the lack of elite physical traits. So I don't think he's an NHL player, personally. It happens, right? Late first round picks or early second round picks. Sometimes they're good. Sometimes they're in the NHL. Sometimes they don't make it. And I don't think Johnson is somebody you should count on. And if you're throwing him into trades, I don't really think he carries any value. Year 6 of development, and you got 7 assists, no goals in a 43-game AHL schedule. I think he's just going to be a good AHLer for his career, would be my prediction. Hope I'm wrong, but that's the way I see it right now. To get to what's happening on the ice for the Buffalo Sabres at practice today, Lindy Ruff and the rest of the team back on the ice. And there were 2 injuries to watch coming out of the break. Beck Malenstein is not on the ice. He did not return. He's been dealing with an injury. Matthias Samuelsson was back on the ice. He was hurt at the end of that run after he didn't stand up for Tage Thompson against the Devils, was hurt after that, didn't play the next game. He was back on the ice. Looks like he's going to return. And then Jordan Greenway practicing again for the Sabres, which is a very good sign for his return. And the way the lines shook out was Kulik, Peterka, Thompson stayed together as that number 1 line. Greenway, I thought that what Lindy would do, was put Greenway back with Ryan McLeod and Jason Zucker to try to rediscover that magic that those guys had early in the year. But that's not what Lindy is doing right now, at least for this practice. He went Cousins, Quinn, and Greenway together, maybe trying to free up some space for Cousins and Quinn, and thinking Greenway can do that. Meanwhile, McLeod was with Tuch and Zucker. That's just a speed line all the way through. 3 of the fastest players on the team, all on one line. I do kind of like that. And then Krebs, Benson, and Lafferty were together. No Dahlin, no Yoki Haru, no UPL at practice for the Sabres. One other thing to get to before we get to, we'll talk Alex Tuch today. There's a trade rumor about him and the LA Kings. And I got a couple of thoughts on Tuch and the idea of trading him in general. But on the Four Nations, sit here on a Tuesday, we're 48 hours away, or give or take, from the final. Charlie McAvoy of the Boston Bruins had been hospitalized. He is not going to play on Thursday. At least it seems like they're talking like he's not going to play on Thursday. He's actually dealing with an infection. I don't know what kind of infection, but Sabre fans, maybe a little PTSD from Game 7 back in 2006. But anyways, don't need to bring that up right now. Quinn Hughes is on his way. He's going to join Team USA in Boston. But here's the kicker. When that was announced, Friedman tweeted it out. Mike Sullivan had said it at the press conference, so a bunch of people actually tweeted it out. And it was, Quinn Hughes is coming. And everyone flipped out. It was pretty awesome, that 30 minutes on hockey Twitter. It was like WWE-esque of, that's Quinn Hughes music. He's running down the tunnel to get to the ring. He's got to get there for the final to win the belt. Quinn Hughes playing as the best defenseman that the U.S. has, missing this tournament. When that news came out originally before the tournament, gut punch, right? Like, you want the U.S. to win this tournament, and that's their best defenseman. That stinks. When you see he's coming back, I mean, pretty awesome. I thought Paul Bissonnette had the funniest tweet of the day, which was, the league should just change the rule and allow any player to join the Four Nations. If Canada announced Tom Wilson, hockey Twitter would be bleeping insane. This is about ratings. Bring in Matthew Olivier, for bleep's sakes. Tough guy for the Columbus Blue Jackets. I love it. Yeah, make it WWE. Their music plays. They come down the tunnel. Here they are. Quinn Hughes is playing. Tom Wilson's playing. I'm so in. Now, of course, the NHL got to be the fun police once in a while. Can't have 2 straight weeks of them doing the right things, right? I guess Hughes can't play. He can join the team. He can't practice. He's not allowed to play unless there is another injury. I wonder if we get any shenanigans between now and Thursday. Because, of course, the obvious joke that everybody made right away is Jake Sanderson of the Ottawa Senators, Brock Faber of the Minnesota Wild. They should take cover for the next 2 days. They should hide. Because if one of them, they're the bottom 2 defensemen really right now on the depth chart. If one of them were to get injured, it would actually improve the U.S.'s chances of winning on Thursday. You know, assuming Quinn Hughes is in reasonably good condition to play, which I would assume he is if he's going there. He's amazing. He's one of the best defensemen in hockey. He's so dynamic. He's so good offensively. I think he's awesome. And I hope they find a way for him to get in the game. Elliot Friedman, maybe they change their minds on who's allowed to play and who isn't between now and Thursday. Elliot Friedman wrote an article on Sportsnet. And remember, he's the guy that's plugged in with the league. Good on Friedman, because in other sports, I think of guys like Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport, like other sports, those insider guys are usually not very willing to criticize the league because they need the league. They need their sources. Friedman, once in a while, will be like, yeah, I don't think this is right. And he'll call it out. And he did that today. Friedman called it out and said, these guys should be allowed to play. Let them play. Let Hughes play. Let Thomas Harley play for Canada, who's only allowed to play if there's injuries. Let them play. You know, these guys are taking away time from their vacations in the middle of this break. They're going to this tournament. They care about it. Let them play. These arbitrary rules about, you're only allowed to have 1 extra at each position. Why was that a rule in the first place? For how intense of a tournament this was, physical a tournament this was, of course these teams should be allowed multiple extras at each position. The U.S. had to play a game with 1 less body last night against Sweden. That should have never happened in the first place. So this is a very easy correction, too. The NHL could just announce, okay, everyone's allowed to play that's there. I hope we get it. Or, I'm not going to lie, because I want to see the U.S. win on Thursday, I hope they make up an injury. I'm not going to root for a guy to get injured. I hope they make up an injury to somebody like Jake Sanderson so that Quinn Hughes is able to play. I want to see Quinn Hughes play in this game. The fans want to see Quinn Hughes play in this game, at least the American fans. So, make it happen, NHL. Let him play. When we come back, Alex Tuch. There's a rumor about Alex Tuch. Is it realistic at all that Tuch could be traded? If not, then we've got a contract to figure out. We'll get to Tuch when we come back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast is presented by SelectQuote. In sports, having a winning strategy is everything. It's how the best teams make it to the Super Bowl or the World Series or the Four Nations Championship. The same goes for life. Having a strategy like life insurance from SelectQuote can protect your financial legacy and keep your family's future secure. SelectQuote makes it easy to find the perfect life insurance policy. As one of America's leading insurance brokers with over 40 years of experience, they've helped over 2 million customers find $700 billion in coverage since 1985. What sets SelectQuote apart is their personal touch. Unlike other brokers that offer one-size-fits-all policies, their licensed agents tailor coverage to fit your unique needs. If you're in good health, you might even qualify for same-day coverage for up to $5 million. No medical exam required. And it's more affordable than you think. You can get up to $1 million in coverage for as little as $20 a month. Get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/lockedonnhl. Go to selectquote.com/lockedonnhl today to get started at selectquote.com/lockedonnhl. SelectQuote. They shop, you save. Back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. All right, we are approaching the trade deadline. I mean, we are not that far away. March 7th is the deadline, 17 days. So we'll get into this more and more as the days progress. And today we'll talk a little bit about Alex Tuch. More so, we'll talk Jason Zucker and Jordan Greenway and Bo Byram and maybe Dylan Cousins even, right? Because he's been the guy with more rumors about him than anybody. But here's one about Alex Tuch. And we've had Tuch rumors now twice in 2 weeks. And maybe that's just the vultures circling the Sabres and calling about everybody. It also could be Adams is willing to listen on anybody right now. So get a tweet and an article from Russell Morgan of HockeyRoyalty.com. Covers the Kings for Hockey Royalty. Now, I think you got to know how to categorize certain rumors from reports, from just conjecture, speculation. You know, you got to throw them all into tiers. Levels of rumors, levels of reports. I don't know Russell Morgan. I have never come across Russell Morgan in my time, you know, watching hockey on social media and all these trade deadlines over the years and free agency. I've never seen a report or something from this guy. So I'm not saying he is full of it at all. You know, what do? You look at the site, you go, okay, looks like a real website. 11.5 thousand followers, covers the LA Kings. Like, all right, maybe this guy does know what he's talking about. But I'm going to file it under rumor. You know, if it's Friedman, if it's Dreger, if it's LeBrun, if it's Saravelli, you know, someone like that, go top tier, that's a report. This one for me, yeah, it's a rumor. Let's throw a rumor in on this one for Alex Tuch. The tweet about Alex Tuch from Russell Morgan is that he's heard LA is among the teams targeting the Buffalo Sabres forward Alex Tuch as the trade deadline approaches. That came 2 weeks after Elliot Friedman wrote in his 32 Thoughts piece that the Tampa Bay Lightning had reached out about Alex Tuch. So then you see Chad DiDomenicis yesterday, who's one of the best right now at reporting on the Buffalo Sabres, giving you scoops online and on Twitter. He tweets, digging around a little bit, and there doesn't seem to be much there now between the Sabres and the Kings. 3 weeks until the deadline still. So even Chad's saying, like, all right, this isn't made up. It just doesn't really feel like it's all that close. That's my read of it from what Chad had to say. But let's talk about Alex Tuch and the idea of moving him now that we've got two teams that have been mentioned, Tampa and the Kings, about acquiring Alex Tuch. Tuch is having a pretty good season. Is he having the season that he did 2 years ago? No, almost nobody is on this hockey team. But he is sitting on 19 goals, 24 assists. That is 43 points in 54 games, which if you're doing the math on that, that is a 65-point pace, which is between what he did last year and what he did the year before. 59 points last year, 79 points the year prior. So he's putting up numbers. He's playing almost 20 minutes a night. He's playing power play. He's playing penalty kill. He's playing on the top line for most of the season. I know that's not happening right now, but all situations. And he, to me, is a guy that you just never really hear complaints about. Not to say that never happens. There are individual plays, I'm sure, where it does, but Tuch's not really a controversial player. There's really never anything to figure out. He's always healthy. He always plays. He is pretty consistent. He doesn't really go long stretches without producing. And he stands up for teammates, right? He's fought guys in the past when he's out there on the ice, even though it's not really his thing. He's kind of thin for his size, so he's not like a big, he's not going to fight Matthew Tkachuk. Well, I mean, he will. He's just not somebody that's going to be intimidating in that way. So Tuch, as you've heard me say before, I think is the best forechecker in the league, or one of the top couple. The speed, the skating, the reach that he has with his stick. He's got great instincts for it. He creates a lot of offense off it and a lot of turnovers as well. He is 28 years old. He will be 29 not till after the season. So next year will be his age 29 season. And then he will be a free agent. So I like the player a lot. And if it's me, I've got no reason to trade him. You got to overpay. You got to make it worth my while to even have the discussion, because the Sabres are so limited on good, consistent veteran players that can score at the top of their lineup. I don't think Alex Tuch is a world beater. I don't think he's an all-star player. He's very good, though. He's a very, very good veteran hockey player. And to me, I'm not saying I wouldn't trade him, but you gotta blow my socks off, I think, to make a trade for him. That, though, is maybe dependent on what his future is for the Buffalo Sabres. So when we come back, let's get to that, and let's use the Kings and the Lightning as examples of what would a blow your socks off offer look like for Alex Tuch that would make you say yes. That when we return here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Sabres is presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. When the games tip off or face off, the NBA action and the hockey action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or the opening puck drop and you want to bet on the late game comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. Love using FanDuel for their live betting options. I like them too for golf in that way, because hole to hole things can change so much in that department that I like to have it very updated, and FanDuel is right there on it all the time. They've helped over 2 million customers, late game rally, picking a player to hit a clutch three, never feel like you're going to miss a chance. Plus, the app is super easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Wrapping things up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, talking a little Alex Tuch trade, given that there are some rumors recently about Tuch. Not that the Sabres are looking to trade him, but that there are teams that are calling right now about him. He has 1 year remaining on his contract. There is an identity debate here about trading Tuch and signing Tuch. There is a age debate here. There is a player debate. There's a lot of different elements here. And let me start with what it would look like. This is not always how you want to operate, but what would it look like if the Sabres moved on from this player and were willing to say yes to a trade offer? Or let's just play it out. What would it look like for them to not be able to retain him at all? Which I don't think is likely, but I'm not saying it's impossible. The thing I always say about this when I get asked is like, Tuch just going to sign an extension? Like, yes, I think so, but I don't know how to judge him based on that. He is a former Sabre. He is a former Sabre fan. He was a Sabre fan growing up, but he knows what it's like to play on a winner and play deep into the playoffs. And when you know what that's like, you might miss it more than somebody who hasn't. And Alex Tuch is somebody who has played in the Stanley Cup Finals. He has played 66 playoff games in his career. I don't know that he doesn't want to do that again. I don't know that he doesn't believe that this team's never going to get it done for him. I don't know how much weight just the fact that he was a Sabre fan growing up really holds for him. It holds enough for him to be willing to come here and give it his all when he got here, and for loving Lindy Ruff, and for, kind of carrying the flag for this team and its identity of the last couple of years. Kevin Adams used to repeat over and over and over, I want players that want to be here. And Alex Tuch has been the face of that. So what does it look like if you trade the guy that is the face of, oh, that's the one guy that wants to be there? It would maybe look like a joke. It would look embarrassing to the organization and to the franchise. Maybe. If they were to trade him and get a lot for him, maybe you wouldn't care about all that. Which is where I get to, what are you going to do to blow my socks off to trade for Alex Tuch? Because I need him. I need wingers. I need guys that are, I need more of him. I don't need less of him. I need more guys like him. So let's look at what you might get from the LA Kings and what you might get from the Tampa Bay Lightning, because remember, this is tougher for the Sabres because you need a lot of things. You need guys that don't have a lot of trade protection or have a reason to want to come here. You need a team that's willing to trade a veteran off their team and not picks and prospects, because you don't want that. So, all right, let's look at LA. It was the most recent rumored team. Who do you want? Who do you want to ask about? Because if they're looking for a right shot forward, is the report or part of the story. So, okay, they want a right shot forward. Well, then give me a left shot guy. Give me, you want to just flip your depth? Give me Kevin Fiala. Give me Adrian Kempe. I don't know if they'd give up Kempe. He's their leading scorer. And he was also just pretty darn good at the Four Nations tournament for Sweden. Give me one of those guys, because otherwise I don't really know what makes sense. If that's all they're trying to do is flip right, left for right, and all I'm trying to do is shake things up, all right, well, maybe I get there. Fiala, by the way, there's contract stuff here too. If you're worried about Tuch leaving, I don't know if they are. I don't think they are. But if you were, he's got one more year left to control, and then he could leave. Fiala is under contract for 3 more years after this season. It's $7.875 million. So you like the contract. Problem with Fiala, by the way, is that he has a no movement clause. So that's pretty tough to overcome, of course. Quinton Byfield is another name to mention here. He is not having a great year. 29 points in 53 games. He just signed an extension. So not performing the way they would have hoped off of a year where he had 55 points. I guess he's not too far off that, but $6 million a year, young player, 22 years old. He is the guy that I would look at actually the most for Alex Tuch, because he fits a couple of different things. He fits a positional need, because the Sabres need centermen, especially if they're going to trade Dylan Cousins away. But Yuri Kulik having to be their number one center right now, you'd like another center probably. Byfield is a center that also can play the wing in his career, so you get that positional versatility. And Quinton Byfield has 0 trade protection. And that's what matters in this conversation. That guy can't say no. So you got a 50 to 60 point guy who's only 22 years old, who was a second overall pick 5 years ago. And he's 6'5", 225, big guy. If you want to bet on there being another step there, and you think you can cash in on the Kings wanting to win right now while Anze Kopitar is still going at 37 years old, maybe a Tuch for Byfield trade is something that the Sabres think they could listen to and consider. Tampa, meanwhile, the team that Friedman mentioned for Tuch, I'd be trading him in the division. I don't care about that. I don't think the Sabres do. That one might be a little bit harder, because like if Byfield is Byfield even knock your socks off? Like he's getting closer to that. Like I'd be willing to listen to that. I might even tell you I'd do it if you work some, kinks around on that trade. One team throws in a pick or a prospect as an add-on. Tampa, I don't know. Anthony Cirelli is a center who has one more year before he has trade protection. So he doesn't have anything. He could be traded right now for nothing. But I don't know that Tampa is in a position to really do that down the middle. I don't really think they are. I think they need him to be one of their middle six centers, Cirelli. So if they were willing to trade Cirelli, I'd do it. I just don't think Tampa is going to. And that's kind of it. Like, I don't really see another player, unless I'm missing somebody. I don't see another player that really makes sense. So you could ask him, okay, you want Tuch? What about Cirelli? No? Okay. See ya. I'll go call LA. I talked to him about Byfield. That, to me, is the only idea I've heard that's intriguing at all. Quinton Byfield for Alex Tuch. I don't know if the value really works great on that. I think it should be pretty close, but makes a little bit of sense for both sides. From my standpoint, though, if you can't do a trade like that, you sign Alex Tuch. You count on him wanting to be here for the long term, live in Buffalo. He's got a young child and a fiance, I'm sure, or a wife. I'm sure he wants to. I'm not sure, right? Like, you don't know what these guys, like, I could guess that he wants to be here long term and, be here for the rest of his career. But again, I don't want to just assume that. These guys are competitors. These guys want to win. And the longer you go not winning and your franchise doesn't give you reason to believe that's going to change, you're going to want out. Like, I'm trying to put myself in Alex Tuch's shoes. I'm from Buffalo. If I was an amazing hockey player my whole life and was 6'5" like Tuch and made the NHL and was playing right now for the Buffalo Sabres and has been for the last 4 years, and I'm from here and I'm a Sabre fan growing up, I'm telling you, I'd be thinking about, like, all right, I'm a good player. Can I go win a cup somewhere? It would at least be a struggle internally. Maybe I'd still end up on, I want to be a Sabre and make it work here, but I don't know. LeBron James left Cleveland once upon a time. He went back. I just, don't want to assume. Don't want to assume a guy's just going to automatically stay here no matter what. All right, you got a thought on Tuch? Feel free to let us know at Sticky Joe Sports on Twitter, or you can hit us up over on Blue Sky and Subtext if you want to hit us up on our text club, subtext.com. Join subtext.com is the place to sign up. All right. We will talk to you next time here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We will preview the Four Nations final between the U.S. and Canada. Talk to you then. Locked On NHL's got more coverage of this tournament and this final for you. You can check that podcast out wherever you get your podcasts. We'll talk to you then here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.